Well, the dust has settled. The ground is shaken. NAR has come through, and guess what? The buyer representation is here. Today, I just wanted to cover what's now the norm in the real estate market. When you go buy a home, you have to sign something in order just to walk in and see a home, at least in California. So here in California, we call it a buyer representation and broker compensation. I've been doing a lot of research out there and asking a lot of questions. Some things have come up and I thought maybe, you know what, I should inform you, give you a little bit of an overview of what you're actually signing, because this is not just a form to go see a home. This is not just a form so you can have an agent. There are some things you're contractually obligating yourself to, and I want to make sure I cover just a little bit of it, kind of an overview, so you know if you sign one, what maybe you should really read it a little bit more in detail. And if you got questions, by all means, after I'm done, you can DM me, you can leave me a message, or you can text me, and let's sit down and we can break this thing down really heavily. There's a lot of it, more than just what I'm going to go over today. But just to kick off, buyer representation, okay? So when you look at this thing, obviously the first section is just going to be your name, information, the basics, okay? Nothing there really to worry about, okay? What really happens is we get into section 2, okay? This is the terms of the representation, and it says plainly on the form, terms of representation, okay? There's a couple key areas, A1 and A2. That's basically just going to give you the length of time. You have the right to do a week, a day. The max they can do is 90 days. I just want to make sure that if you look under A1, you're going to see that if it exceeds 90 days, it's technically not a contract. It's exempt. It's basically, it's void. So if somebody's trying to get you 4, 6, 8 months, can't be done. Only 90 days. I just want to make sure you knew that, okay? Also, if you look at the next one, A2, there's a type of representation. There's an exclusive and non-exclusive, which means you have options. So A2 can decipher which route you want to go. So make sure you sit with your agent, or if you have questions, ask me what a non-exclusive versus an exclusive agent means, okay? It makes a difference in when you're buying a retail or buying a home, okay? Now let's talk about section 2B. This is properties to be acquired. If you look at B1, B2, and B3, it's very basic. It's just going to ask you what you're looking for, what time, what kind of home you're looking. It gives you kind of a rough estimate of what cities, what counties, and if there's things you don't want, types of homes, multifamily, you check the box and say, I don't want to look at these. So it helps your agent be a little bit more informed when they're helping you. And we have section 2C, which basically is going to say, hey, I've already seen these properties, or these are things that I want to pay attention to. Those are little extra forms. We can go in more detail on that. And then there is also a section 2D. So if you've seen properties with somebody else, you might want to include that in your agreement here with your new agent, because that could get you in some legalities later on. So we want to be clear on that, okay? Like I said, if you want to reach out to me and get more in detail on how that works, DM me, drop me a comment here, and I can reach out to you after. Section 2E, this is a big one. This is where we start talking money. Got to understand, this form that you've signed allows you to go in to see homes, allows you to talk to your agent, but you're contractually obligated to pay commission or compensation to that agent, okay? So the form allows you to come in, but when you sign it, you're committing yourself saying, hey, I'm gonna pay my agent. And if you look at section 2E1, there's a percentage or a dollar amount. You're committing to that, okay? Granted that you can negotiate and structure a contract to absorb that, but here's some things to keep in mind. What if you sign at 3%? And your deal or the home that you go into contract is 2%. What happens to the extra 1%? You're paying 3%, and they're only gonna pay 2%. These are some things you might wanna have a conversation with, okay? Have your agent break it down for you. Like I said, that's contractually obligating, so you kind of want to know how much money you're gonna be on the hook for, okay? E2 section talks about how it's paid. If the seller pays it, it's gonna go direct to the seller's or the buyer's agent. But here's the neat thing about it. It says according to your obligations. Basically what it's saying, again, you're obligated to pay this. If the seller decides to, hey, I want to help it out and give some of that money to you, it covers your compensation, or it only covers a portion. So be very clear with your agent. Might want to find out what happens if it's less than what you're signing to. And then there's F, which is a cancellation. Yes, you do have the cancellation option. And I'll cover that a little bit further more. There's a section that tells you what you can and can't do. Section G1 and G2. These are real basic forms. These are basically saying, hey, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to buy a home with you, Mr. Agent, but here's a couple of things. Now, as a buyer, you're going to have to sit down and stipulate what you have, what you don't, what you're willing to pay, what you don't want to pay. You gotta put these in writing. Why? Because it protects you. Why does it protect you? Or how does it protect you, you ask? Well, it protects you when you're going into contract on a new home. You have stipulated, hey, I don't have the money for the down payment. I'm using this assistance program. Or I don't have the money to pay your compensation. So if the house doesn't have compensation as part of the deal, I might have to walk away. It has to be very clear. There's quite a few other stipulations that are based on financials and what you have and what you don't have. So make sure you sit down, you fill this out, and your agent goes over to you in fine detail with what you can and what you can't do. Don't be going to the day where it's close of escrow date and this number that you have to come up out of pocket is much bigger than you have, because if you can't afford that extra and it's close of escrow time, guess what? If you don't have that extra money, well, the deal could potentially fall apart, and there could be some other ramifications. So you want to be very careful on this, okay? And I also want to touch base with you real quick. There's also a next section right below there on the representation. There's a section 3, okay? Please make sure that if you haven't read this, that you do take the time to read this. All representation agreements now must include what's called a broker compensation advisory, known as a BCA, okay? In that BCA, it's going to stipulate who does what in a transaction. You're going to talk about it a couple times through buying a home, who does what in a transaction, what happens if agents represent both sides, and most of all, it's going to really detail how payments are structured, how things work. So if your agent hasn't taken the time to really dive in and explain that to you, which they should, make sure you grab a BCA, which should have come with that form, read it thoroughly. Make sure you understand your obligations, how money moves, because how compensation and how commissions get paid is a big deal now. It's not like it used to be. The seller doesn't have to pay for it. It's an option, and it is a negotiable option for the seller. So don't get caught blindsided. Read the form and understand it. There's also another section in there, section 5, cancellation of the buyer representation. Just to make sure we're clear here, that just because you've signed something and it's under contract with this agent for 90 days, you do have the right to cancel. And it's not a mutual, it can be unilateral, meaning you have the right to say, this isn't working, I'm not happy, or I just don't think this is the right fit. You can cancel it by email or text, and boom, you can move forward at that point. That easy. These are some of the new things that they did, so that way you're not locked in and you're not stuck with this person if it's not working for you. And it also gives you the freedom of choice to say, hey, I tried this way, it doesn't work. Or I don't think I'm getting the full picture here, I want to walk away. Or, you know what? You're not listening to what I'm doing, what I want to do, so I'm not happy with you. Or if you run into somebody better you think's a better fit, this leaves you open to say, hey, this isn't working, I can walk away. This is kind of a couple things that I want to make sure clear. I've been out doing some research, and these are the things I find that are the most common. That this form is, yes indeed, to help you get in to see homes, but make sure you read it in detail. Make sure your agent explains this to you. If they did not, or they left some of the areas out that I have just covered for you, by all means, reach out to me today. Send me a text, DM me, drop me a message below and a comment, and I'll reach out to you. We should set up some time and have a conversation, because before you get into contract or before you start looking, you should make sure that you're in the know, because that's what I do for a living, is keeping you in the know. Michael Young, E3 Realty. Thanks for stopping by.